This week on the Virtual Skeptics. Bob and Eve are lost in New Jersey. Barb shows how peanut butter and chocolate don't always mix. I made that one up, so. There we go. And Tim watches the clock. I'm your host, Brian Gregory. Music is too darn loud. I'm just going to leave it right there.
And the rent is too damn high.
And the rent is too damn high. And the peanut butter has too much damn chocolate. Hi, this is the Virtual Skeptics. If you're watching, great. Great, awesome. Thank you for watching. This show, we do stuff and silly things, and we talk about stuff, and you watch, and it's awesome. If you want to participate, you can tweet with hashtag Virtual Skeptics, or you can use the Q&A app on Google+, or you can comment on the YouTube stream, and I will try to pay attention to that. I usually, not many people do that, but I will pay attention, and we'll try to work your funny stuff, or not funny stuff, or questioning stuff into the show. I will introduce my co-hosts for this week. We're a little... Hold it. Where's Bob and Eve? Oh, that's right. They're in New Jersey. I'm sorry. Okay. This right here is Barbara Drescher, former psychology instructor, blogger at ICBS Everywhere, and contributor to numerous skeptical projects, including Insight Without an S at skeptic.com and The Odds Must Be Crazy. And this is, if I can, wow, it's still doing that. This is Tim Farley, blogger at SkepTools and Insight Without an S at skeptic.com, skepticality contributor and creator of What's the Harm, and former JREF fellow. Hi, y'all.
Hi.
Hi, Brian.
Hi. How you doing? Now, this Google. Okay, I'm going to talk to you, Google, because I know you're watching, and I know you watch all the streams, all 16 billion streams that you have on your service at all times. Google, please, please. The little thing where I click the windows and it changes the video, for me, it needs to be fixed. Thank you. Okay, now that I got that out of the way.
I can't see you, by the way.
You can't see me.
Audio tech support.
I see only black.
Okay.
You are black.
I swear I did not turn off the lights. Who's first this week? No, wait. We have the intro.
Don't you have other
Intro.
business to do?
What? Yes, we got business. Business. Let's do business. Tim, do you have a trivia question?
I have a weird one this week,
All right. I like weird ones.
and it has to do with an odd series of letters and numbers.
Ooh.
And I'm typing it in so it'll appear on Twitter. What is the skeptical or scientific or both significance of the string of letters and numbers 6, E, Q, U, J, 5?
That's the combination of my luggage.
6, E, Q, U, J, 5.
No.
What is that? What does that refer to?
That's my password on America Online.
Whoops.
That's it. So that's going out on Twitter. If you guys can figure that out and post it on one of the three sources that I mentioned, please don't use the Q&A app for anything but questions. I'm looking at you, even Bob.
Even Bob are spamming us in the Q&A app right now.
Oh, no.
Yep. So there, the secondary thing we do every week, which, if you can participate in this, that would really make me happy, because I go to extensive research and effort to bring to you obscure and interesting video clips to show on the show behind me in these two windows that, I realize that our audience is the kind of people that really care about this obscure, wonderful art that I behind me.
I wish I could
So if you
see
can-
what's behind you.
Yes, if you can figure out what's on these two screens behind me and tweet it or post it on the YouTube comments, I will give you some thanks. Make me happy. Okay, and on with the show. Barb's up first.
I'm up first?
Barb is up first.
Okay.
And I know that your topic doesn't have anything to do with peanut butter and chocolate.
Nope.
But it seemed
Well, it could. it could have something to do with peanut butter and chocolate if you had to make a decision about peanut butter and chocolate that, you know,
I make the decision every day.
had anything to do with anything, really.
Peanut butter or chocolate.
So it could. What I wanted to talk about was, and I'm going to kind of wing it today, but this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to talk about rationality and a little bit about the difference between rationality and intelligence. I've probably spoken about that some on the show already at some point because I've given talks about it. And I started a series of blog posts on Insight about this topic. It's a 3-part series, and I just did part 3. Part 1 I did over a year ago, so it was kind of time to wrap that one up. But
did you film them all at once and then edit them and release them in parts so that you get the most box office money from
it? You would think. Actually, it's all derived from a talk that I gave at TAM 2013, so it was kind of all done at once. But you know, the first one I used a lot of the material from the talk, and the second one was about half from that, and then I had to recreate a lot, and that's why it took me so long to write the last one. But it was a weird one to break into 3 parts. But in the first post, I really talk about the fact that intelligence is not rationality, and rationality is not intelligence. Even though we're all human beings, we tend to think about intelligence. If somebody's smart, we think that they're going to be rational about everything, and that's, of course, not true. So we've got a couple of researchers, actually quite a few researchers, but in particular, Stanovich and West have spent quite a bit of time studying this and trying to figure out exactly what is the difference between intelligence and rationality. It's something in a way that we can measure it, because we can measure intelligence if you have IQ, right? An IQ tests intelligence, and it really kind of defines what the word intelligence means.
Okay.
That makes any sense.
That was one of my first questions when he said smart. I was like, well, how do you define that? And yeah, I guess there's the IQ test or something like that. But yeah, like you said, I guess the test defines the term. And
it does a little bit.
It's kind of recursive.
Don't let that fool you. I mean, just because the test really does define the term does not mean that we're not actually measuring something of significance. Okay, so intelligence is something significant, and it is something that we can measure and that can be used for some purpose. Predicting certain things. But what it is a measure of is cognitive abilities, and rationality isn't just about abilities. It's about behavior. It's about what you will do. So IQ tests measure what you can do, and rationality is all about what you will do in a given situation.
Okay.
Because rationality is really about, are you making decisions and holding beliefs that are derived in a way that gets you closest to your goal. So if your goal is to be happy or to maximize human potential or maximize the number of people that you can save with some treatment or help as many people as possible, then are you making choices that will actually get you to those goals? Or are you making choices that you only think are going to get you to those goals? So, and it's not just about choices, it's also about the beliefs that you hold and so forth and how you get there. So these researchers have been working on separating these things in hopes that they will be able to develop some sort of measure for rationality, because that might actually be more useful. And one of the points that I argue is that rationality is much more useful than intelligence. Intelligence is great, and in fact, it's a component of rationality. If you're highly intelligent, you're more likely to be rational than if you're not so intelligent. But it's not everything. And rationality is more important because it actually meets our goals. It actually helps us meet our goals, whereas intelligence only allows us to solve problems that might be needed to meet our goals, but it's not enough, right? So they've been working on this and trying to develop this RQ. I am not the most optimistic person in the world, so it should be no surprise that I'm not very optimistic that they're going to be able to develop this test, because
okay.
I was just going to say once you develop a test for anything, people find ways to perform. And since IQ tests are about abilities, you can't really beat them without having high intelligence. I mean, you can do a little bit better with some training, but you can't, you can't push, you can only push the envelope so far. With rationality, it's really about what you will do. And so as soon as you figure out what the tests are asking you, you could beat a test very easily. So
I don't know if I've ever taken an intelligence test. I mean, what's the typical kind of thing that they ask on an intelligence test?
Well, intelligence tests, they vary a lot. I mean, they used to have a lot of trivia in them.
Okay, so knowledge.
They don't anymore. That's crystallized knowledge. I mean, there's some of that sort of thing. There's really two different types of. We talk about crystallized intelligence, which is knowledge, and we talk about fluid intelligence, which is the ability to its cognitive abilities. And IQ tests today are more aligned with testing fluid intelligence than they are with crystallized intelligence.
Ability to figure things out and that kind of stuff.
The ability to figure things out, and pattern seeking, pattern solving, recognizing, so it's hard without giving specific examples, which I don't have off the top of my head. It's hard to give you ideas, but I can tell you that they've changed over the years, and they've changed over the years in an attempt to kind of cut out any of the cultural biases and things like that might get in the way of measuring actual cognitive abilities. So you get things like analogies.
Okay.
But a lot of times analogies, your ability to solve analogies might be tied to language. But there are also other types of analogies. There's visual patterns that you can use to test someone's ability to, pick apart analogies.
And I think I've seen questions like this where it's like A is to B as C is to, and then they have a list of words. So it's like trying to draw conclusions about the association of two words, and then you use that same association to apply to another set of words.
Right.
I've seen questions like that. Now, comparing that to what you might think a rationality test. I mean, what would that be like in contrast?
Well, there's a set of cognitive tasks that don't correlate as well with cognitive abilities. So you've got highly intelligent people who still fail at these tasks, and they have to do with things like that human beings are naturally have a difficult time with, simply because things get in their way. And what Stanovich and West have done is they've really tried to identify what are the factors that determine whether or not people are capable of consistently answering those set of questions. So first they started off with separating out the tasks and seeing how they cluster, seeing how performance clusters. And they identified a whole subset of cognitive tasks that appear to fit this category, right? And then they attempted to pick apart what are the qualities that people have that allow them to consistently do well on these tasks. And they found some very interesting things. And in fact, they found a number of different factors. But to me, all of those factors they break down. You could categorize them all into 4 general categories. So intelligence is one of those categories. Intelligence does factor into whether or not people are rational. If you're intelligent, you're more likely to be rational, consistently rational, than if you're lower intelligent. And then knowledge is another one. You have to have knowledge in order to be rational as well. You have to be able to have all the pieces in order to draw the right conclusions, right? But the other things are what we call thinking dispositions. So these are more personality traits. They're not exactly personality traits, but that's the closest that I can come to describing them. So these are basically they're dispositions. They are the way that you are. And the most important of those are something we call need for cognition, which is your drive to actually want to discover the answers.
Oh.
So just as an example,
the desire to learn.
Yeah, and to understand.
It's something I look for.
Not just to understand, but not just learn, but understand. So not just have the facts in front of you, but to understand where they came from and so forth. The desire to think something through. So just as an example, I sometimes lecture when I lecture on or talk about probabilities and the way people think. I talk about the Monty Hall problem. And
I think it's
need for cognition. Yes. Yeah, it is fascinating. But you're probably one of those people, too, that had to see it for themselves, right? So you had to work it out because you can't wrap your brain around it unless you've done a simulation. You know? Yeah. And that, to me, kind of embodies this concept of need for cognition. It's how much do you need to think it through, or do you settle for the answer that the first or second answer that appears to be correct. And that actually ends up getting tied to what I think is probably the most important factor, and that's how open-minded you are. And open-mindedness
which is a misused term, yes.
Yeah, it tends to be wrapped around, it tends to be kind of clustered with these open-minded in different ways. They all tend to be related. And one of those is your ability to accept or to even consider the probability that you might be wrong about something. So how tightly you hold on to your beliefs. Or in order to be rational, and here's the big key. In order to be rational, one of the things that is an absolute must is that we have to be able to hold our current beliefs or our current worldviews or our current ideas about what is and is not in a kind of escrow. You know, we have to be able to hold it, set it aside while we consider alternatives to that view in an objective way. Because if you can't set aside what you think is true, then you can't be objective about the new evidence coming in. Yeah. And I'm not saying forget what you know is true, because that should factor into everything. But to be able to hold it tentatively enough that you can be objective about the rest. And that's a problem. If people are not flexible enough to think in that way, then there's no way that you can really be rational in any consistent manner. And so, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that the whole nature versus nurture thing kind of plays into this some, because I mean, how much of this do you think is just base personality, and how much of it is the what you were taught when you were growing up, and culture and various things like this can affect whether or not you're open to this particular personality trait is something that I think could be learned possibly.
It's a tough one. That's a really tough one, and I'm kind of the school that it's pretty much impossible to totally separate nature and nurture and to understand that completely. Yeah. But we can at least investigate some of that, and human beings are so complex. I still think that we're a long way off from determining the full extent to which personality traits like that are learned or innate. But I do find it, I find it a very interesting topic. I mean, it's hard to. Nobody thinks that they're not rational. So as much as we,
there are the odd few that take pride in not being rational.
Maybe, but
yeah.
But those are the people that kind of don't really understand what you mean when you say rational,
I'm not sure that I do. So.
But it's one of those things that I like to teach, because I think that if you understand it, you can be more rational, or you can at least behave more rationally if you can identify these things. But there has to be some underlying ability to recognize it in yourself, and that's a very, very difficult thing for people. And it's funny because whenever I talk to skeptics, of course, nobody thinks it applies to them. They all think that the other person is not being rational. So I have a series of 3 blog posts about this. The first one is really about this difference between intelligence and rationality and how it plays out in situations in the real world. And the second one identifies more things like cognitive laziness that gets in the way, and that's that need for cognition. Do you hit the first answer, or do you end up going with your gut versus actually thinking it through fully? And a few people actually think things through fully, especially when they're not in a real world situation. Most of the way that we study these things is through laboratory studies, where there's not actually, somebody has to make a decision about buying something, but it's not their money. So, the motivation's not there. So it is a difficult thing to really measure. But the last one, the post that I should be up late today or tomorrow, is really about this overconfidence factor, which is probably one of my favorite things to talk about because I get to talk about narcissism too, and which of course is one of my favorite topics. And that's where things like the Dunning-Kruger effect come in, and where I think we get very dangerous, because what happens is when we are not open-minded enough to even recognize that we don't know something, then we're setting ourselves up to be inherently irrational and to not even recognize that we're being irrational. So I did want to discuss the Dunning-Kruger effect a little bit. I think I've talked about it before, but it's a little misunderstood at times.
Okay.
And some people think that it's really this effect that the people who are the least competent think they're the most competent.
Uh-oh.
I think shows it a little better.
No, she's back. Okay. You froze there for a second. Sorry. You might want to repeat the last thing you said.
I was saying that I think that most people, or at least most skeptics, seem to think that the Dunning-Kruger effect is about how the least competent people think that they're the most competent, and that's not really what's going on. But I have a little graph to show that I think explains it a little better.
Charts and graphs. Charts and graphs.
I can't see anything, by the way, except a frozen screen.
Okay,
so
well, the chart's up now.
It is. Okay. So what you're looking at is an illustration of the common, what the Dunning-Kruger effect actually looks like in most studies. Now, each domain has a little bit of a different pattern, but this is basically what you see. And what you see is what they measure is people's perceived competence, so how competent they believe they are compared to other people. And we all have this thing called the self-serving bias, where we'll almost always rate ourselves as above average in almost any domain. And so nobody's going to rate themselves in the bottom quartile. Certainly not the people at the bottom quartile. They're going to rate themselves as above average. On average, they're going to rate themselves above average. So you'll get the people, say, in the lower... This is true. But you'll get the people at the bottom, like the bottom 25%, will rate themselves as, maybe 55% on average. And then the people between the 25th and the 50th percentile might rate themselves, they'll rate themselves higher than the people below them rate themselves. So there's still an upward trend there. But they're still overestimating. So the people at the bottom overestimate their competence the most. The people above them overestimate their competence a lot too, but not as much as the people below them. So the more competent you are, the less you overestimate your competency. And it isn't until you get to the very top of some domains, the very top 5 to 10%, where people start to actually underestimate their competency relative to other people. So this is a factor, or this is an effect of, or at least it's explained by most researchers, including Dunning and Kruger, as you know what you know, and you know what you don't know. So the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know everything. And the less you know, the less you are aware of all the things you don't know. If you're completely incompetent in a field, then you don't know that you're incompetent because you don't know what you don't know.
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, it makes sense that the more you know about a particular area, that the more you realize that more that you can pick out the things that are missing. Now, what I wanted to ask is that I guess it's the corollary. Is that true? If you underestimate your ability in an area, are you an expert?
Well, it's on average. This is always on average. Always. But on average, yes, the people at the very top tend to underestimate. So they tend to put themselves in the 80th percentile when, 75th or 80th percentile when they're really in the 90, 95, and that's what tends to happen.
I really suck at playing bass, which means I must be, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to think it that way too. But we're always talking about averages here. So we're never talking about individuals. So you can't pick an individual out of any of these studies and predict exactly what they're going to do.
It seems that needs to be said more often than it is that these are studies and they're averages, and you can't you can't apply it to yourself really. You can't.
No, but if you're aware of it. If you're aware of it and you know that you're human and you know that this is a very strong effect, and it is a very strong effect, it's been replicated in all different domains, all kinds of different domains, over and over and over again. So this is a pretty well-established effect. Yeah. And you're aware of that, and you're aware that you're human, you can adjust, you can make adjustments for it. The problem is once you've made adjustments for it, then are you accurate or are you still overestimating? Who knows?
Well, you can't apply it to that, that middle manager that you work with that's just an idiot. Just saying.
You can. You can predict with more degree of accuracy than if you didn't know it. Just how competent that person actually is, based on their perceived competence. But this in itself isn't related to rationality. What's related to rationality is this problem of the Dunning-Kruger effect combined with the problem of inflexible thinking, or arrogance, as I like to call it. Yeah. The overconfidence, unfortunately, is problematic when you are not open-minded. You can be overconfident and get feedback and recognize that, I'm not as competent as I thought I was. And then you can actually make changes to your behavior to become more competent. But when you are not flexible in your thinking, then you don't make those changes because the feedback is not accepted as something that is your fault or as accurate or something like that. And that brings me to, I'll talk about the next slide in a second. It brings me to a study that I did a few years ago with a former student. We started to realize that a lot of students, I taught upper division courses that were kind of very conceptual in nature, and these are not courses that you can use flashcards to study with. They're not very effective. It's not an effective way of studying. It's something I strongly discouraged, and I always shared my PowerPoint presentations, but I had students that would try to study using the bullet points because they're so used to multiple choice tests where if they recognize a word, associated with another word, then they're a little more likely to get it right. And I never taught that way. I always used short answer and essay questions where they had to actually demonstrate a deeper understanding of the material in order to get to do well in the course. So what I found is that students would get this feedback, they would fail exams, and they would continue to study in the same way that they were studying. And we saw a lot of entitlement in the classroom. That's something that's been growing in recent years. And we suspected that a lot of these students felt entitled to continue those study habits, and that perhaps what they were doing was not understanding that the feedback they were getting should have told them that their study habits were bad, that they needed to change something. But they felt so entitled to do this.
Yeah, I've been doing it this
and
way
I've been
for
doing great in all my classes. And we know how our memory is when it comes to things like that. What people remember getting much better grades than they actually got. That's another self-serving bias.
Ask me about, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It just made me think of, ask me how many engineers that I've encountered that have been working on projects a certain way for 20, 30 years, and that's the way they do it, and they haven't changed because that's the way it does.
Even when they have failures, when they have failures, because they forget the failure, and they don't attribute the failure to what they did. And so they forget it, and that's exactly what happens in school. These students don't attribute their failures or their poor performance to anything that they're doing. And so they forget that they got a D on this test instead of a B. They remember that they got a B, and they continue to struggle along, and then when they get the poor grade again, they remember everything differently. So what we did is we actually systematically studied this. We measured a large number of things, actually. We measured academic entitlement, which is basically an entitlement measure that's specific to academics. So how entitled you feel to the grades that you're getting, and the type of studying that you're doing, and the type of tests that you feel entitled to, multiple choice tests and so forth. We studied narcissism. We measured
narcissist college students.
Yeah, we measured superiority. Feelings of superiority, narcissism, and we did a measure of competence and perceived competence, and we came up with I thought was a great measure, judging the validity of syllogisms, because those are things that are difficult, and if you're not very, very familiar with doing them, it's hard for you to judge whether or not you're doing it well. So we had that as a measure of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
So just really quick for the studio audience, meaning me. What is a syllogism?
A syllogism is a very short argument. Usually it's just got the basic parts to an argument. So, for example, Socrates, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. So that's a basic syllogism, and it's a valid one, and it's a sound one. But there are syllogisms that are, that sound like they're sound and aren't. So there's Daisy's a dog. Daisy's a dog. No, I didn't hear you. Sorry, go ahead.
I said, is this statement false?
No, that's not a syllogism. That's not a syllogism. That's just a puzzle. No, a syllogism has to have premises, and it has to have a conclusion.
Okay.
So all dogs have 4 legs. Daisy is a dog, therefore Daisy has 4 legs. That's a syllogism, right? It's a valid syllogism. It's a sound syllogism, except for the fact that not all dogs have 4 legs. So
it's a false premise.
There's a false premise in there, but the syllogism itself is valid, and that's the tricky part. So if somebody recognizes that the syllogism a premise is false, they may judge the syllogism is invalid when in fact the syllogism is valid, because the logical structure is sound. So that makes these very tricky unless you're accustomed to judging them. So that is a valid syllogism that a lot of people would judge invalid. So it's a great test for that Dunning-Kruger effect. Anyway, one of the things that we also measured is how these students study. So are they more likely to use flashcards than they are to do the reading? Are they more likely to when they write essays, do they use templates as opposed to starting from scratch and so forth? So what we call things like flashcards and other types of rote memorization are called rehearsal learning strategies. So because you're basically rehearsing them.
Wait for it.
Understand them. So we measured that as well, and what we found is that is exactly what we hypothesized. that students who are high in entitlement are also high in narcissism, which is not a big surprise because those two things tend to be very highly correlated. But they also tend to use rehearsal strategies. And they were the least competent, and they overestimated their competency the most. So
But they made it up with confidence.
yeah, they had a lot of confidence and not a lot of performance there. And they tended to attribute their academic successes and failures even, and success. What's interesting is successes and failures to outside forces. So if you're attributing your poor performances to outside sources, things like the system, or the teacher doesn't like me, or the test was bad, and so forth, then you're not going to recognize that that grade is a result of anything that you did, and so you're not going to change your behavior. And if your behavior doesn't change, then guess what? You're just going to continue to get bad grades. So I call this, if you want to bring up the next one, I call this the cycle of incompetence.
Cycle of incompetence.
Yeah, because it's a cycle. You're just going to keep going in the same direction. It's just going to keep getting worse. It's Dunning-Kruger actually talked about perpetuating ignorance, because if you're ignorant and you don't know you're ignorant, then you're not going to do anything to become less ignorant. You're not going to change anything to help you become more competent in an area, because you don't believe, you don't understand that you're not competent. And this is where this is a problem, because if you cannot open your mind to this, if you cannot be humble, if you cannot have any sense of humility in every walk of every aspect of life, you cannot be rational.
I can't stop thinking about Donald Trump. I don't know why.
Oh, he's a comedy goldmine.
Yes.
Well, so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, because we have so many rational people people that think that they're rational. Specifically, particularly in skeptic circles, everybody thinks that they're rational. That's what they're doing there, right? And yet, we are all irrational, and we're all irrational for so many reasons. And one of the major reasons that we're irrational is because we all think we're right. And we all think we're rational,
Hey, I memorized all the names of all the logical fallacies. That makes me super smart.
Exactly. and that's one of the things that really bugs me about things like militant atheism and people that bait other people in arguments just so that they can win an argument. Because that's not what this is about. It's just not. And you might win all the arguments, but that doesn't make you the most rational person, if that's your goal.
Huh. So there's a couple of questions that came up on the Q&A app, and I'm trying to get back there if Google will let me.
I only see, are you smart?
Yeah, well, Bob is being smart, but not in the intelligent.
Clear him off there.
Yes, clearing off.
That guy off there.
I'm going to start with this one. Okay. I think this is interesting. Nicholas B. posted this one. So how competent would the statement, the most elementary and valuable statement in science, the beginning of wisdom, is, I do not know. I do not know what that is, sir. B. Now, it's kind of an awkwardly worded question, but you get the point. There's a statement about the importance of admitting I don't know, and the beginning of wisdom. I mean...
It is, because the first thing that you have to do is identify what you don't know, because otherwise you can't then find out.
So is it more of the like we're talking about the personality trait of being able to admit that?
It's not just admit it to other people; it's accepting it within yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to give up your beliefs to be able to set them aside. To be able to be objective does not mean that you have to give up your beliefs or to even think, I'm wrong. You don't want to do that because you need your understanding of how the world works in order to evaluate information. But what you need to be able to do is to be humble enough to be open to the idea that you're wrong, or that you don't know something, or that something that you thought you knew, you didn't really know.
Yeah.
And that's a foundation in science. I actually talked about this in the blog post about how science addresses all of these things that because we use science because we're not rational, it makes complete sense that science would address these things, and it does. Science addresses the intelligence issue because the scientific process itself is inherently intelligent, and the people conducting it undergo peer review. You have to be somewhat intelligent in order to make a living in that business, right? It's also knowledge. The knowledge factor is addressed because scientists do thorough literature reviews every time they conduct a study, and they do that so that they have a solid theoretical foundation for the hypotheses that they test. Without that solid theoretical foundation, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
But it also, and then the cognitive laziness issue. Well, science itself is curious, so that's kind of part of the deal. But the open-mindedness is taken care of again in peer review. You don't have a choice but to be open to being wrong in science because there's so much competition and so many cooks with the soup. Too
many cooks. Sorry.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that one.
Many cooks.
But
Too many cooks.
That's going to be running through my head now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome for the earworm.
A fine product of the state of Georgia, I would like to point out.
Yes.
Is it really? I love that.
Every one of those actors is based here in Atlanta.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
It was filmed here.
That's a lot of them. But basically, there's so many people involved that they're all trying to prove you wrong all the time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how overconfident you are or how closed-minded you are. You're going to get proved wrong if you're wrong. That's a process of science. But when it comes to individual people, that's just not the case. If you're making a choice and the buck stops with you, you're making the choice. You're going to make an irrational choice or you're more likely to make an irrational choice if you're not open to the idea that what you believe might be wrong.
Yep. Well, that was incredibly fascinating. I was just really enjoying the discussion and the questions. Thanks, guys, for contributing to that as well. Thanks, Barb. I can tell you're passionate about that. We enjoyed it too.
I may drop out here. I'm going to try to get you guys back on video. So if I drop out, I'll be back.
But now it's Tim's turn, and I'm not sure what Tim's going to talk about. It's probably going to be something interesting though, because it's Tim.
Yes, it's mysterious. I came in. I was running super late. I've got a lot of weird work stuff going on this week, so I wasn't able to prepare my notes or slides or anything. But I just wanted to talk about conspiracy theory. Since Bob's not here, I'm going to steal this topic from him. Ha ha ha, Bob. The conspiracy theory that's emerging, like right in the last few days. It started with a fellow by the name of Dr. Jeff Bradstreet, who, if you follow autism and anti-vaxxer circles, he was a relatively well-known figure. He's not as well known as Andrew Wakefield and those guys, but if you follow it, you probably have heard of him. And he used to run a clinic down in Florida, and until recently, he had a clinic, I was not even aware, right here in the Atlanta area, in a suburb north of Atlanta called Buford. And doing quack treatments for autism, putting autistic kids in hyperbaric chambers, and he's been known to do chelation therapy and just anything you can come up with that might sound like it might cure something, he would try it. And he's actually a medical doctor and has done apparently some studies that are not that great, but at least he sort of tries. And apparently has a ton of fans in the autistic parent community. But he, lo and behold, on June 19th, turned up dead in a river in North Carolina, a couple hundred miles from where he lives in northern Georgia.
Wow.
And had a gunshot wound to the chest. And they recovered a handgun from the river, and the police have preliminarily said that it was a suicide. Almost instantly, like within hours, if you looked in the right places on the net, people were saying, gunshot wound to the chest, who commits suicide that way? So people were instantly saying that it was that he had been offed by somebody. And
he knew too much.
Right. He came out, he's been around for a long, long time. He used to practice in Arizona. He had a clinic in Florida. Now he has a clinic in Georgia. It's not like he appeared yesterday. But the other detail that came out, the investigation is still ongoing, so we don't know exactly what happened. But the detail came out that the FDA apparently had visited his clinic a few days before he was found dead. So that, presumably, if they were threatening to shut him down or file charges against him, might have been a good motive. Of course, people are saying, "Oh, I saw him just days before he was dead, and he was smiling. There's no way he could have committed suicide." And if I'm not even going to get into that. If you know anything about mental illness, it's not that simple.
Yeah. It seems like it's also a common story that people hide it well sometimes.
Right. So all condolences to the man's family. It's a terrible, terrible thing, but the conspiracy theory started immediately. Well, it got worse, okay? And there's a story on Doubtful News as of today, actually, titled "Baseless Conspiracy Bubbles Over Controversial Doctor's Death." It turns out 2 other doctors died within 2 weeks of Dr. Bradstreet. A chiropractor who also practiced in Florida died on June 21st, a couple days after Bradstreet's body was found. Now, he died under completely different circumstances. He was found dead in a car, and the authorities are not saying anything looked unusual. Apparently, he must have died of a heart attack or a stroke or some other thing like that. He was apparently an athlete of some kind, used to run marathons or something. I found some reference to his death on a runner's website. And they're, having they had normal obituary form and whatnot. Nothing unusual about it until, of course, one of the alt-med websites picked up on the fact that these 2 alt-med doctors, who otherwise don't really have much in common, the one is a chiropractor and the one is a medical doctor who does autism stuff, and started to draw connections between them where they aren't there. And of course, this would probably make a decent odds must be crazy case of, how often does a random alt-med doctor in the United States die, and what's the likelihood that a couple of deaths would happen within a few days of each other, and it's probably incredibly high, especially if you draw a wide net, because they weren't like cohorts in autism therapy. As far as I know, the chiropractor guy wasn't involved in autism stuff.
And also you have a selection bias going on because people happen to be looking right now.
Right, exactly.
Would they have noticed if there was only one guy?
And then the actual weirdest case is a case that happened a week after that on June 27th, I think. I think her body was found on June 29th, so about a week and a day after the chiropractor died. Another doctor, a woman also in Florida, different part of Florida, who did holistic medicine and stuff like that. Also not particularly associated with autism or anti-vaccine, but just alt-med stuff. She was actually found murdered. I mean, just flat out, there is no question. This woman was murdered in her home. It happened that her family was away on a trip, and she was with them and then returned before them, so she was alone in the house, and something happened, and they're still investigating. So the conspiracy nut websites, there's at least one YouTuber who has done a couple videos on this big conspiracy, and it's starting to filter out to the anti-vax website. So it's kind of interesting. If you want to watch the birth of a conspiracy theory, get out there and search for these doctors' names. Teresa Sievers, Jeff Bradstreet, and Hellendahl.
I'm sure that's a
Hedendal. And you can just watch them. One of the recent links I found today in my Google alert is on the Farrakhan Nation of Islam news website, because if you follow anti-vax stuff, they've gotten into the anti-vaccine stuff.
Wow.
So they're tying into this, and so you can just kind of watch it fan out over the next few weeks and see how far it goes. I'm sure the big alt-med bloggers will be next, Mike Adams, and those guys will start claiming the government is out to kill all the alt-med people. So, and of course,
the FDA is just a cover for a government assassination group.
Yeah.
So.
And of course, you know how these things work. Any evidence that would disprove one of these things ends up being more evidence for it. So I just thought it was interesting little story, and you can see it up on it's on the front page of Doubtful News right now.
Yep. Comment on Twitter from Ben Bradley on that he mentions that there probably are tons of doctors that advertise nowadays that they do at least I'm thinking at least they do complementary
and alternative.
Yes, an alternative. I'm sure that's a buzzword now, and they'll put it on their marketing materials.
The other buzzword is integrative medicine.
Yeah, integrative. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. So I know that big hospitals around here they have that on their buzzword list. So it's probably not hard to find people with some kind of association that have died recently. So
whenever I see integrative medicine, I sometimes think of my college days and go, what does calculus have to do with medicine?
Yes, don't drink and derive.
Sorry,
that was a joke my daughter told me recently.
Nice.
Yep. So, thanks, Tim. That was interesting. So, guys want to go down that rabbit hole? Go ahead and Google those names. That would be fun.
Bob just tweeted something.
Yes.
That reminded me of something that Bob and I, as soon as Bradstreet's death became known, Bob and I filed a couple of FOIAs at various agencies.
Oh.
When we first heard that Bradstreet had killed himself, the first rumor was that the FBI had visited him. So I filed a FOIA with the FBI, because as soon as someone dies, their FBI file becomes FOIA-able. FOIA is Freedom of Information Act.
Yep.
And Bob says that he just got an expedited reply from the FDA about his FOIA, about what they were investigating, and his was rejected. Which is understandable. If they had an open investigation, they might not. That might come under rejectable things.
Yep.
There's only certain things you can get.
Yeah.
So
wait a couple weeks and submit it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they might, as part of the investigation of his death, it might come out what the FDA was after him for. So we just have to wait and see what the authorities say.
Okie doke. So, running along a bit here, trying to cram the last bits in here. Oh yeah, I got
you'd
this.
Think we'd come in under time with only 3 people here.
Yes, I have
Good.
robots for you.
Robots!
This week. Robots.
I can't see anything.
No. Well, this week I got some really cool news. So, did you know that there's a company in the United States that is making this thing? Dun, dun, dun. This company called Megabots. This is their prototype full-size combat robot. It takes 2 pilots It can drive around on those treads. It can stand up, and it's got a couple of air guns on the side. They did a demonstration. Let's see, this was at Maker Faire, where they drove this thing around. They shot some stuff out of the cannons and talked big. And the other thing that they did, let's see here. Let me show you the little video. This is a little bit of the video from Maker Faire. I'll have to skip forward because he's going to sit there and talk a bit. But let me see. Da, 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 da. There we go. See, now it's gonna move around a bit and shoot its air cannon and stand up and I'll talk while it's doing this. So this thing is insane. It's gas powered. Takes two pilots. One pilot drives. One pilot does the guns. Doesn't have any like electronics or anything, but they have controls where they can aim and fire and stuff like that. But they have big plans for doing both potentially military aspects of this. But the main thing that they're working toward is they want a full-size robot combat league.
Yes.
Yes. So they want to put on big scale like shows that robots beat each other senseless or chase each other around and fire guns at each other.
They shoot paintballs.
Yes.
It's a paintball league. It's the world's biggest paintball league.
Well, actually, maybe it will be a paintball league. Let's see. Actually, it was in June. They put a video out challenging another maker of large robots, a Japanese company, which I'm going to show you their bot here. This was actually on the show. I think I talked about this last year. This is the Kurotas. It is a rideable, user-operated robot made by the Japanese company Suidobashi Heavy Industry. And this thing is slick. I mean, it's got four wheels so they can like drive on the road. Single pilot inside. It has like a full heads-up display, and like the video. Let me show you through the video. Let's see the video. This is like a training video for it. She like goes through all of the things that this does. Shows off the heads-up display, and there it goes. There she's getting in. He's got like a pilot's helmet and all kinds of stuff going on here. It's got a couple of, I think it shoots tennis balls. But it's got controls where you can actually move the controls and then the arms move in tandem, so it's like you can actually move the arms around and stuff. There's an app. So you can remotely control it. There's it driving on the street. Well, let me see if I can go back to that. They're driving on the street. That's actually a video they made showing it. But and look at that. It shoots water something or others.
Nice.
Those are like water bottle things. I don't know. And apparently it's got a BB gun, like Gatling gun on it, that shoots when you smile.
Ah!
Which, I mean, this is total. I mean, if you know anything about Japanese culture, this is like, of course it does. But this thing's awesome. It doesn't look like it moves very... there you go. Jump off. That was pretty funny. But, I mean, both of these companies are selling these things. Of course, apparently Japanese companies further along. That was, I think, middle last year. They had a promo. And it looks polished. And, like, it's got full electronics inside. The other one looks more like it's an industrial thing that they kind of threw together. They're not really... manufacturing them yet. But the American company challenged the other company to a full-on, full robot battle. And the idea is that within a year, they will do an exhibition battle one-on-one. Now, the Japanese company this week came out with a video saying they're going to do it.
Wow.
The only condition they have is that this is going to be a fist fight. And not a gunfight. So I have no idea what that means at this point. I'm sure that this is going to happen at least because it's going to be great PR for both companies. But I am looking forward to this with like excitement like you would not believe. This is going to be awesome. I mean, of course, I'm happy that BattleBots is back, but these are full-scale, large, mega robots. This is going to be better than a monster truck rally. I'm just saying. Okay, then. No laughs. But there you go. That's the one thing that was awesome that happened this week. It's been all over all the new services. I will put links to both company websites and the videos of the back and forth, because there was like the American company did this whole explosion video of the challenge, and then of course the Japanese are like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. What? It's gonna be cool. Yeah. They were all nice, non-American about it, but it's cool. So check that out. I can't wait. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? No. A couple of questions. Nope. So that put us right about on time. Let's do the wrap of the wrap up.
Let's wrap the wrap.
The wrap. Did anybody get the trivia question answered?
Yes! Our old friend and very reliable viewer, Pierre, on YouTube.
Pierre,
we had a few guesses about it being the designation of a newly discovered planet, or what was the other one? Other guess that it was the launch code from the movie War Games. I'm surprised nobody guess that it was some famous person's license plate.
No, that was Out of Time.
But But Pierre correctly got that it's the name of the WOW signal, a very famous incident from the history of the SETI efforts to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. They sweep the skies with various telescopes and whatnot, and in 1977, an early radio telescope found this signal, and those letters were how the computer printed it out on the printout. The computer printed out things, and the letters had certain designations, and the person who was in charge of it and was reading the printouts, and it was 1977, so there was literally a paper printout, circled it and wrote "wow" on the printout.
Yep.
And so now it's called the WOW signal, and because they were searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, presumably it might have been somebody trying to talk to us. The problem is they could barely isolate it to a certain part of the sky. It's never repeated.
Yep.
No one's ever been able to hear a signal like it, so they pretty much don't have any idea what it was.
Yep. So some weird signal. It could have been, it could have been a glitch for who only know.
Yep.
Can't figure out where it came from, and it never came back. So it's just the WOW signal.
The WOW signal.
Big mystery.
Might have been an alien. Could have been Bigfoot.
Oh. Aliens. So no one guessed the videos behind me, and I did really easy ones this week because. Of course, this week we got a new Robot Apocalypse movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I heard it's bad, and I'm going to see it anyway because
Which one?
Traveling robots, man. The new Terminator movie, Genesis.
Oh yeah.
Arnold.
It so does not look good.
I know. It's got like 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, something really bad. So I don't care. It's got killer robots, time travel.
Well, we'll all
there.
see it eventually.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure I want to go to the theater for it.
Yeah. So behind me, on my right, that one right there, my thumb kind of touched. There you go. That one is the trailer for the new movie, and that is the trailer for the original movie back in.
I wish I could actually see it.
Yeah. So.
And I might have been able to.
Which I'm probably going to take my kids to see, well, at least my daughter, because she loves this kind of stuff, even if it's bad. But she told me that we have to watch the old one, because she hasn't seen the old one, so we have to watch the old one first.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll watch the new one. So.
Well, it might be helpful, too, because apparently there's in the ads, you see a scene from one of the earlier movies, so apparently they loop or something.
Or something.
Yeah, I've been enjoying, as a promotion for the new movie, the traffic smartphone app Waze has added a celebrity voice, so I've had Arnold telling me about police and hazards on the
That's
road.
awesome.
And it's hilarious when there's like a hazard, which is typically a car parked off to the side of the road, which, if you're in the right lane, that could be a hazard. Arnold comes on and says, "Hazard reported ahead. Get down! Get down!"
That's awesome.
Yes, that's awesome. I might have to download that just for that
Yeah.
alone. Okay, then. So, book time and announcements. Announcements. My announcement says skepticality. Yes.
Yes, there is a new skepticality.
So there's a new skepticality. Anybody on skepticality that we know?
I
have
am.
no idea.
Eve is. And there is
Tim?
a Odds Must Be Crazy, but I haven't listened to it.
Okay. So
I assume the regular folks.
okay. So go check that out. That's awesome. The other thing is TAM is next week.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be there,
I'm
unfortunately.
going to be in Boston.
Yeah. But I hear that there are a lot of cool people who are going to be there. The guy...
I'm going to be there.
Oh, geez, Tim's going to be there. Who's the keynote? The guy from Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal?
Zach Wienersmith.
Zach Wienersmith.
Saturday morning breakfast cereal.
Yeah. So that should be interesting. And, of course, Randy and all the other thereof associated people.
Lots of great other folks. Simon Singh and
Yep.
Bruce Hood. And
Yep.
two Massimos. Two for the price of one.
Two
Massimo
Massimos.
Piucci and Massimo Polidoro.
So if you are planning to be or want to be at Las Vegas next Thursday through Sunday, there's all kinds of cool TAM-related stuff going on at, theamazingmeeting.com. Go check it out.
Yep.
It's really cool. I am really sorry that I can't be there. I'm sad. Okay. That's all our announcements.
I think so.
Who's got a book?
I got a
Ready?
book.
Go. Give.
Few qualities or quantities are more prized in American society than intelligence and intellectual accomplishment. When it comes to academic achievement, parents love to win bragging rights on their children's behalf. Just look at bumper stickers. My child is an honors student at East Cantaloupe High School, proud parent of honors student at North Igloo Elementary. Or for laughs, my French poodle is smarter than your honors student. In today's cutthroat world, many parents are understandably eager to lend their children a competitive advantage over their classmates. This undeniable fact raises an intriguing question. Could parents give their children a jump start by stimulating them intellectually in infancy, perhaps only a few months, weeks, or even days after birth? I'll stop there.
My favorite bumper sticker that I've seen around here in Columbia is Jesus loves you. Everyone else thinks you're an asshole.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Tim, you got a book?
Yeah. 1. A member of any of the ancient Greek philosophical schools that denied the possibility of any certain knowledge. 2. A person who believes in or practices philosophical skepticism. 3. A person who habitually doubts, questions, or suspends judgment upon matters generally accepted. 4. A person who doubts religious doctrines.
Switch video, thank you. I yield to no one in my admiration for Keller, but Harry is something entirely new. The escape artist business, you mean? Dash, not everyone shares Harry's fascination with handcuffs and ropes. I think your brother is betting too heavily on this idea. Will the public pay money to see a man who can, what, get out of things? It's a strange notion for entertainment. People tie him up, he escapes. Frankly, I don't see the appeal. There's some novelty, perhaps, like Fire Eater or a circus strongman, but nothing more. What's your book, Barbara?
I don't know if you can
Baba.
see it. 50
Baba.
Great Myths of Popular Psychology by Scott Lilienfeld and a few other people.
Yeah,
Can
it's
you
kind
see
of
it?
washed out in color, but
Atlanta's own
There
Scott
you go.
Lilienfeld.
cool. Yeah, you're all about the Atlanta, aren't you?
I am a booster.
And I was, by the way, the topic was the Mozart effect.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Tim, what was yours?
That was Webster's definition of skeptic. Sorry, I've been super busy at work.
Hey,
I don't have time to find a book.
I have to make a rule that we're only allowed to use the dictionary once in the entire run of the show.
I'm out then.
Use the encyclopedia once,
Oh,
and
God.
Wikipedia. I think you can use that once. I did that. So there you go. I'm taking the sticker off the front of my book. This is a book that I got. It's a used book I got at one of my favorite local independent booksellers called Atomic Books in Baltimore. Really neat place. If you're ever in Baltimore, go check it out. It's worth it. This book cost me $3.98.
Nice.
Yes, awesome. And it is by Daniel Stashower. Stashower? Stashower. It's Stashower. I've not heard of him before, but it looked very interesting. It's called The Harry Houdini Mysteries, The Dime Museum Murders. And it mixes a little bit of the history of Houdini with him being and investigating murders. And set in the time he was doing his shtick. So far it's been very interesting. And well worth the $3.98. So I guess is that everything? Is that all our stuff?
Yep.
I say that every week because I'm
Stick a
never
fork
sure.
in it.
Stick a fork in it. Thank everybody thank you all. Thank all the people that stuck it out and watched us. And there's the logo. And oh no, it's not the logo. That is the logo. There you go. See? And this is the music. I'm gonna. There you go. See, now it's not so loud. The Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of What's the Harm.net, Skeptical Humanities, myself, ICES Everywhere, and Delta News. Our logo is designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com, and our theme music is by Music Ant, used with permission. And I stuck the landing. Thanks for watching.